Welcome everyone, Costine here with my campaign overview guide for Suppiluliuma, the Great King of Hatti, who is, from my perspective, one of the strongest Legendary Lords faction rulers in the game, due to a number of facts. He does start with 3 settlements, so he starts with wood, he starts with stone, he also can get a decent amount of food because he can get the livestock field, at least in this particular settlement. I mean, it is a food settlement. The wood is just really a side benefit over there when you're looking at it. And in the capital, he gets food, he gets wood, he gets a variety of benefits, like he can get more food. Though Hatti in general does have a lack of certain resources, in particular stone and in particular food. Like the Nile just has significantly more food than Hatti does have. And that is going to be an issue in your campaign. You also just don't have access to as much bronze as some other factions do. Though you do have a vassal with access to bronze over here. There are a couple of settlements that do have bronze in them, gold, stone, all that, but you just don't have the insane combination of resources that you might see over here. Like if you're looking at like just scrolling all the way down here to Amon Mes. If you look at Amon Mes, what he has 2 gold settlements, he has stone, he has bronze over here, he has food, stone, more stone, a great deal of stone because of the Nile, more gold, a lot of bronze as well. He's lacking in wood, but that's not really as much of a significant issue as the lack of bronze. Now, it's interesting to think about Suppiluliuma because he is supposed to have a really difficult campaign, but in reality you end up dominating the campaign map. Part of that is you do start as a king, and with the ability of starting as a king, you get the ability of vassalizing factions from the very beginning. So that is an enormous diplomatic strength that you can really utilize in his campaign. And you start with significantly more territory than Kurtis does, who only starts with one settlement. Though, don't get me wrong, don't underestimate Kurtis' potential in the campaign because it certainly exists. But if you're playing Suppiluliuma, you might even be able to avoid the civil war altogether if you play your cards right in this particular campaign. And hell, you can even vassalize Kurtis and make him your ally and eventually confederate him, whereas you are supposed to ultimately clash. Another thing to mention about Suppiluliuma is he starts a war with the Casca invaders, but these guys don't have settlements, they just have 2 armies over here. And once you deal with these armies, you can do whatever the hell you want. I'd probably recommend taking the control over the entirety of the Hattusaf province, wiping these guys to the east, getting access to more gold, more food, stone as well, and then just taking territories in whichever way you want. Like you can go to, you can go to the west, you can go to the south, you can go to the east into Canaan. There's a bunch of territories and a significant number of options in this campaign. Now, the problem in his campaign is that a lot of the factions that do surround him don't necessarily like him and are likely to declare war against him. But here's the interesting thing about Hatti. Hatti is incredibly defensible because you see this massive river that surrounds it from the south, from the west, even from the northwest. That is a significant barrier that any attacking army has to overcome. And you do have a vassal from the very beginning of your campaign, and you can gain more vassals as well. So Suppiluliuma has an incredibly secure position. His territory is not easy to attack. Let's say you're playing a campaign in Suppiluliuma, one of the things you discover quickly that moving into Hattusa as a land is difficult, and it's going to slow you down. That river is going to slow you down because you're going to have to spend all your movement range just to cross the river, unless you're coming in from the east. And still, you do have a major river going over there that you are going to have to overcome. Now, I would not recommend playing him defensively, like he's supposed to be defensive. No, I would play him incredibly aggressively to take advantage of his strengths on the campaign map. Now, looking at those strengths, your active command is to greatly improve your replenishment. That is great. It allows you to recover from battles very easily, while your passive command will increase the workforce in all your provinces until the next Hor cycle. Now, whichever one you use depends on your situation. Like, do you want to wait 1 cycle to get that workforce benefit, or do you want to use replenishment to fight more battles and recover from those battles more easily? Keep in mind that civilization collapses, and it will start collapsing and there's little you can do about that initially. But as civilization starts collapsing, replenishment is going to go down for every faction involved, but the fact that you can improve your replenishment is a significant boon in Suppiluliuma's campaign. Further, let's take a look a bit at the research tree. You don't even need necessarily the workforce, because one of the things you can get early on as the Hittites is the workforce growth, the legacy of Hatti, which gives you free workforce growth. There are some other benefits as well over here, of course, that you can get in a campaign that are pretty useful. Personally, I would probably unlock an extra god slot as quickly as possible, so going down this path would be great, and then getting Life of a Soldier for experience bonus, and then, yeah, of course, the happiness and other benefits as well. You can improve your stone, your food, your resource production. One of the things that could be useful is getting the sculptor's benefit, so that you get influence for provinces with monuments, because obviously that can be a really nice benefit to have in your campaign. You do start with the Hittite Rock Sanctuary, so that's going to give you so you have a legitimacy benefit in your starting province. You have 6 legitimacy, and then there's another one that also gives you 6 legitimacy, so you have 12 legitimacy by default, and you'll also gain more legitimacy because obviously you do start as the Great King, and you start with free sacred lands. So if you play your cards right, as I emphasized, you can avoid the civil war. Now, looking at his faction summary, he can gain more regards with intrigues, and he starts as the Great King. That is his benefit. In terms of titles, your titles increase your army's defense and replenishment and help keep your provinces stable during the course of a campaign. So if we look at the titles that he does have access to, obviously, you know, Overseer of Militia is available to everyone, but looking at some of these titles, we can see, like, we can get Frugal in conscriptions, so reducing upkeep and recruitment. We can get movement on sea and land for 8 ardor. We can get various benefits: siege holdout time, line of sight, reinforcement radius, happiness, food upkeep for his army, though that's not really too big of a deal. You can get Huntsmaster for replenishment, ammunition, missile range. That's always great to get. And then, yeah, a couple of other benefits as well over here when it comes to the titles that you do have access to. In terms of unique buildings, so I'm just going to use the faction summary. So you get the Militia Gathering Spot for morale, upkeep, melee defense. You get the Refugee Center, which is a tier 1 building that gives you a bit of food, but crucially workforce growth and happiness. And then you get the Garrison Quarter. So you get stronger garrisons, more morale, more melee defense as well available in your campaign. And you start worshipping Arena. So Arena reduces cost recruitment, increases happiness and province. So you're not really going to face a lot of rebellions when you are playing as Suppiluliuma. So if you look at this province over here, like if we pray to Arena, we get raid income, resources from looting and occupying, and resources from sacking settlements in a campaign. So a sizable amount of benefits that Suppiluliuma does have in the campaign, and it is going to get better. It is also going to get better with that respect. He does start with the infantry barracks, so the units he can recruit early on in a campaign are the Hittite Axemen and the Hittite Spearmen. These are heavily armored units that are, without a doubt, the best units you can have at the beginning of a campaign. You do start with the tier 3 barracks, so you start with the ability of recruiting tier 3 units. Is it worth recruiting tier 3 units in the entire army? Probably not completely. Like, I'd probably recommend a combination of Hattusan Swordsman, Hittite Axemen, and just a couple of Spearmen, not that many. You are lacking in ranged units, so you can, of course, get the Target Yard, which you can improve into the practice ring. So if you're looking at this, you can get armored Hattusan archers, which are certainly decent enough. They're not the best in the world. You can also get regular Hattusan archers if you need them, but really, believe it or not, like, you can play with the entire melee stack as Suppiluliuma. Just ignore chariots, because chariots are just not that great in the game, and just focus on the infantry, and that will work quite well during the course of any campaign that you do decide to play as Suppiluliuma. In terms of the campaign plan, yeah, I would start taking out the Zippalanda province, take that out, deal with this faction, and then, yeah, just make a sweep over here, maybe vassalize one faction, take out another, vassalize one faction by giving them the territory. So like you could declare war on Kanesh, take that territory for yourself, you know, take some of this territory for yourself. Like you can potentially even get 2 vassals over here in the east, and that will help you out. Especially because one of the ancient legacies that you do have access to as the Hittites is the ability of getting the Benevolent, which gives you instant construction and other benefits based on your happiness and your vassals, how your vassals feel towards you. But you first need to get those vassals. You have a significant early game advantage compared to everyone else because you do start as the Great King. You're just kind of trying to keep it together. So I would just make a sweep to the east, vassalize factions going there, and then make, take this province here as well. Maybe take some territory that you give to Kurunta to get a vassalization agreement with here and avoid a civil war situation altogether. Even if a civil war does start, it is something you can win, I might add. But it would be ideal if you avoid it. I would probably try and vassalize the Phrygians, like maybe declare war on them, take some of the territory, get a peace agreement, sell us some of it back. Parha is not worth keeping alive, so I would either take it or take it and sell it to a vassal, maybe make Kurunta more useful by giving him territory, because Kurunta can be a really powerful vassal that will help protect your coastline. Now, here's the complication that Suppiluliuma has, because he doesn't have all the strength for free. There is a downside, a major downside, I might add. The downside is this. You get a rogue army spawning directly to the north, basically over here, under the Caspians. You get the Phrygians spawning to the west, and you have the sea people spawning in the sea. You might want to take over Cyprus, by the way, for the sake of all the bronze that is here, because that is the major source of bronze that you have early on in the campaign, or for much of your campaign is going to come from Cyprus. Cyprus is the breadbasket of bronze, if you will. Or really the breadbasket for any campaign. It's not food that's a limiting factor, it is bronze. Hatti. And once you're done with that, yeah, you can move into Canaan, you can move into Egypt. You might even want to avoid Canaan and go directly into Egypt just to start taking the sacred lands, getting the landmarks, increasing legitimacy. The one downside of playing the Great King is that you need a significant amount of legitimacy in order to get access to the powers of the throne, so to speak. And the ancient legacy, like there's one that gives you princes, so you can make, so let's say if you have 5 vassals, you can put 5 princes, those are your generals, and they get some titles, all that, but the benevolent is far better. You just don't have access to the versatility of ancient legacies that the Egyptians do have. That is, in a nutshell, looking at some of the units more in detail, like we look at the tier 5 units, you get the veteran Hittite spearmen and veteran Hattusan axemen. So Suppiluliuma has access to the best infantry roster in the entire game. The strongest melee chariots as well. He is lacking, however, in terms of ranged units. But you can always make that work by recruiting native units from other factions. And it's not like Hittite archers are terrible. They're not. But it's just not really a focus of the faction, if you will. So, with that in mind, let me just load the campaign over here that I was playing as Suppiluliuma. Let me just delete that. And load this campaign. I streamed this campaign. Customized campaign, to be sure. Yes, absolutely. But all the same, a significant amount of things that I was able to accomplish over here. Okay, so this is a campaign, turn 59. I have achieved, well, everything. Like, well, pretty much everything. So I'm very, very close to ultimate victory. Actually, I could achieve it with, vassal agreement. It's a bit weird because I thought I had achieved ultimate victory, but it doesn't matter, really. I am aware of several factions. The crucial thing is I do have, like, all these powers. So these are the powers you get as Great King. And I did manage to vassalize Kurunta over here in this campaign. Yeah, I made a mistake. I vassalized Parha, and so I was paying for that. Don't do that. Don't repeat those mistakes. And I have an entire army that I'm stationing over here in Cyprus just to hold the invaders at bay. And if we look at the diplomatic status, I have a vast array of territory. Now, keep in mind that this is with more starting resources. This is with significant benefits in terms of movement, range, replenishment. But So while realistically you can't accomplish all of this in 60 turns, unless you're using a difficulty customization like this, the things you have available in a campaign, like, are just incredible. Like, just the potential you have in a campaign is pretty incredible. You just gotta play the game with Kurtis well, and if you can prevent Kurtis from gaining a lot of legitimacy, because he's the major threat, he's the only one that can really contest the throne and start the civil war. Like, once the civil war starts, the others will join in. But if you can prevent Kurtis from starting that civil war, because he's the only one that's gonna have a lot of legitimacy, that will give you a substantial level of strength that you can then use in your campaign for your benefit. So over here I traded him the minor provinces to make him a vassal here. Actually, the vassal you do start is kind of useless, and they have territory that you do want. Because, like, there's bronze over here, there's stone. So it might be even great to break that vassal agreement. But obviously, don't do that. There's also significant downsides if you decide to do that. One of the crucial things about Suppiluliuma is to not lose your legitimacy, your reliability, because that's when things will start going to hell. And over here, you can see what I'm getting. So the way vassals work in Pharaoh is that they have gratitude. So gratitude comes in many forms. It can be resources that your vassals give you every at the end of every turn. It can also, or I think every season, if I'm not mistaken, and it also is vassal units. Now, the benefit here with the benevolent is that you get extra resources from your vassals, and you get tokens of gratitude. So basically, I have 100 gratitude. I can spend these for for things like, for instant construction, which is 20 tokens, or I can get an embed informant, or I can get a court action, or I can get tempered by war to get extra experience. And keep in mind, you can get, and this is an enormous benefit, and because you can vassalize from the beginning of the campaign, you can get a lot more of these. Like, the instant construction benefit alone is ridiculous, because it means, like, oh, you're building a tier 5 capital, or you're building a monument of greatness, or something like that. Do it instantly, right, for free. Because you can obviously use gold for that, but it would be a significant amount of gold. You being able to do that for free, and you can see the amount of gratitude that I am getting from these factions over here, from the vassals I do have in this particular campaign. And I am marching on Egypt to teach them what their proper place in the world is. But you are going to have to spend it is a longer campaign. It is designed to be a longer campaign in terms of accessing Great King power, but it's not like you're bad in the early game. In fact, as I said, you have the best early game army of anyone involved. Like, it's supposed to be, like, he's supposed to be harder than Kurtis. I'll be honest, I think Kurtis is significantly harder to play, because you have to build up that legitimacy, and by the time you build up that legitimacy, Suppiluliuma may have entire provinces are under your control, and you're gonna have to fight him as well. You'll guaranteed have to fight him for the duration of the Civil War, which is going to be a nightmare to deal with. But that's what you want to do as Kurtis. So yeah, Suppiluliuma is the easier campaign. In fact, he might be the easiest campaign to play in quite a few ways, because you have strong units, you have a strong position, until like turn 30. Like, even, like, I think it's like actually turn 40 or so, that you start getting like Caskins, and like to 30 you get Sea Peoples, right? 40 or so is when you start getting Caskins showing up for North. So you basically have free reign for 40 turns. Well, I'll be blunt. If anyone's watched my channel for any length of time, you dominate. Well, this is obviously a ridiculous situation. It isn't that insane compared to some of the things I've done in other campaigns on the channel. Like, look, like I have 100k food. I have, and keep in mind, well, like, okay, let's say food, bronze, all that don't matter, because I obviously am getting, I have 50% less upkeep. But here's the crazy thing. I have 10,000 wood. I have 3,000 gold. Keep that in mind. That's where the insanity comes in. So Suppiluliuma, while he doesn't have, say, the economic potential of Amon Mes or Tasrat or anything like that, he is still an incredibly strong legendary lord with a heck of a lot behind him that will give him significant benefits faction-wide, and it will work quite well when you're looking at it. And also, because you're Great King, guess what? You have the Great King units. Golden Spearmen, Mesadi, all those other things that the Great King does get access to. there is a ridiculous level of power. You just don't have a fancy hat like the Egyptians. But you do get the Celestial Acts, which gives armor-piercing diplomatic relation with Hittites. You also start with and you have that from the start. You also have the Golden Spear of the Great King for influence, causes fear, and it is available for anyone who controls Hattusa. The hard thing to get is obviously the Kurunta's bow, but honestly the bow doesn't really matter from my perspective in this situation. So it ends up like the campaign potential is absurd, and he can like it kind of feels, to be honest with you, it feels like playing a Warriors of Chaos campaign or Wood Elf campaign in Warhammer 3 in terms of his faction potential as well. Preserve civilization, because you will enjoy preserving civilization as opposed to letting it collapse. Quasine here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.